I've listened to quite enough. I've heard, I've listened, and it's interesting, but not surprising. Like everyone else, I'm interpreting what's happening through my active paradigms. When I listen to the Subway Shooter, Frank Robert James, when I listen to his talking, I hear the same gross generalizations that I rail against online. He sees everything in giant blocks. So if there's a news story that says something happened in Afghanistan, he stretches that entire thing that happened in Afghanistan to that happens to everyone in Afghanistan. And that thing that happened is, they're not supposed to do that because they Muslim. And Muslims do this, right? His view of the world, his view of everything that he talks about is in huge blocks. And so he can't see nuance and difference. And the more news he takes in, the more blind he becomes, the more dark he becomes, because the news is just saying bad stuff. And contrary to what's going around the internet about who he was watching, or if he was watching Manosphere content or Tariq Nasheed, he was watching all of that stuff. But the thing that pops up most in his videos is the news. He was more upset over Ukraine and Russia than he was over anything. And so while the various groups are looking to validate their own perspectives and to cast him in the mold of whatever the villain is in their paradigm, the truth is, this was just a disturbed person. He was a disturbed person, and he was a raging alcoholic. He drank 150 proof rum straight to the head. By the end of his videos, he was drunk. The times when he's coherent is when it's the morning videos, when he's about to go to do his gym workout. But even those videos he's still a little bit affected. But the way he processes information is truly a liability. To anybody who processes information that way is dangerous, actually. If we're looking for a pattern, it's not what he was watching in that way. It's the way that he processes information. He never got past slavery. He was really, if you look at his age, he's born in 1960. And so by 1975, he's 15 years old. When all of the assassinations happened, they happened when he was a child. Then when all of the waves of destruction that happened between 1960 and the crack epidemic, the crack conspiracy, I should say, in the 80s, that whole time period where Vietnam happened, people came back from Vietnam addicted to drugs that miraculously are in great supply in the cities. That whole environment, he grew up in that environment. And the talking points that he speaks about are from back then. He talks as if the last 30 years didn't happen. The last 20 years, 30 years didn't happen. He's stuck in that period from 1960, maybe 63, 64, up until about the 80s. He doesn't go beyond that. And so the stuff that somebody would have been saying then, that's what he's saying now. He doesn't include anything that contradicts his made up mind. We can look around the internet and we can see other people who think that way. But his exact profile, he fits the profile of shooters. Alone, lonely. There's a video of him celebrating his birthday by himself. No, I guess he doesn't have any family that he's close to. I guess he doesn't have any children that he is involved with. He comes across just as a lonely dude who studied a lot, but he studied with a made-up mind. And I think there's a natural tendency in people as they grow older to want to impart the knowledge that they've gained to someone. And I think it's something that happens naturally with time. I remember there's I think it's an Igbo saying that talks about the thing that kills young people is that they don't listen. The thing that kills old people is that they don't say. You got all this stuff that you want to say, and the framework that we have to say these things through is actually our family. And so the things that I would say to my son, he has no one to say them to. And so YouTube becomes a saving grace for a lot of people because it gives them at least the idea that they're talking to someone. His videos didn't have any kind of traction. He may have had some people that said something in the comments, but very few comments that I saw. He uploaded a lot of videos in the last days, and he doesn't mention anybody when he's talking. The people he's talking about are pie in the sky, far away from him, distance away from him. It's not like they are people that he's interacting with. He was really a guy alone talking, and it's one of the things that I've always worried about. I've always said, and I've had people to tell this to, be careful who you let agree with you. If you want to be careful of something, be careful who you let agree with you, because unless you know them, exactly what part of what you're saying they're agreeing with, and you understand their philosophy, you may be participating in something that's darker or more extreme than you thought. And so it really is important, more so than ever, to be long-winded, to take the time to draw the context around what you're saying, and don't just deliver the highlights, but take the time to build the foundation for what you're saying so it can be understood in the proper context. Minus the context, that thing that you said can be taken and added on top of some pile that you want nothing to do with, that you may completely disagree with. So you may be galvanizing some movement in some person that you didn't intend to, that you don't want to, that you don't agree with, that you don't believe in. So I've taken the time, instead of putting out videos and giving a judgment right away, I decided to just listen to this dude for a while. And I recognize a lot of information he's talking about. I see where he is. I remember being somewhere similar back when I was maybe 17, when I had read the first half of Malcolm X and hadn't read the second half of Malcolm X. It's interesting that a lot of his videos, or a few of his videos, start out with some speech from Malcolm X that was before he went to Mecca, before he left the Nation of Islam. He even acknowledges that. He's well read. He studied in that era, but he's lost the grip on reality. The action that he took in the subway doesn't really connect with the philosophy he espouses in his videos. It doesn't connect at all, because how does what he was doing, how does it even help anything that he was talking about? Him going to prison. Now he is the slave that he was so worried about us all becoming. He was obsessed with the idea that slavery was coming back, because he has spent so many decades of his life immersed in that information, that he saw it everywhere, and he used that information as an excuse for everything that happened in his life. So while there are people who are going to try to blame the Manosphere and Kevin Samuels, and going to try to blame ADOS and Tariq Nasheed, and listen, what he's talking about predates all of that stuff. He's older than both of those guys, and his philosophy is rooted in an older time. If anything, there's parts of what they're saying which may have resonated with him, but only the parts that fit within his philosophy. The rest of it he just pushed to the side. He's not some young guy that's been led by these older men. He was an old guy who already had a made-up mind, and who was drinking 150 proof rum straight to the head, straight out the bottle, no mixed drinks. He said himself, I'm an alcoholic, but I ain't hurt nobody. I'm in here, I'm not driving. That's all he had, was that alcohol and that camera to express himself. No telling what would have happened if he didn't have that camera to express himself to. So I disagree completely with the panic around some of these internet streets talking about the feds is watching. Listen, everything you ever done online is already watched. And unless you engaged in some criminal activity, you have nothing to worry about. Having conversations about topics is not going to put you in trouble. The kind of conversations and the profile that this guy had is a whole different thing, because it was matched with the criminal record and with threats, with other things. Most people are not having those conversations. Most of the conversations are just about points of view, not about taking up arms and going to do something. If you listen to Frank Robert James's videos, he had no allies. He was against every single group, including his own group, his own self-identified group. He was against them too. He blamed them. There's no group that he aligned himself with. It was him, the individual, and everybody else in the world was flawed. Every single person. There was no good. There were no good people. And a man that would fire guns into a smoke-filled train doesn't care about any man, woman, or child of any ethnicity, any nationality, any political party. He doesn't care about any of that. This was an individual with his own demons. I was talking earlier in another recording about, actually I was talking online, I was answering some comments on someone else's video about how children blame themselves for whatever happens in the family. So the son at the table spills a glass of water. The mother gets angry at the son. The father gets angry at the mother for getting angry at the son. And they start arguing. And it becomes dark, and no one likes to hear the parents fight. And they get sent to their room. In that child's mind, he blames himself. His brother and sister also blame him. Look what you started, is what they say. Look what you did. Because that's the way it works when you are in an environment where you control nothing. When you don't even have the power in your mind to blame the other person, you blame yourself. When their authority over you is so absolute that you won't even blame them, you won't even name them in your mind, you blame yourself. And so that's not something that is only happening with children. There's a version of that same thing that happens on a larger scale with cultural ethnic groups. And so we even see that happening. If we were to think about the concept of ethnicities and take it into YouTube and replace ethnicity with sectors, we have sectors blaming themselves for what happened with that guy. We have sectors blaming other sectors of YouTube for what happened with that guy. Now, I happen to have maybe more access to more of his videos than most people. And I can see in his videos, the biggest influence in all of his content is the news. The regular, smegular news. Not any specific ideology other than his own. He was his own ideology. There was no one really saying what he was saying. He was saying some of what everybody is saying, but rolled up into his own way of thinking that was not logical. It was not. His idea that people of different ethnicities shouldn't be able to have children, that scientifically, if people from different ethnicities were to try to procreate, the babies should be born sterile, because when a horse and a donkey have a mule, that mule is sterile. Or when a lion and a tiger are crossbred, the liger is sterile. That means that when a European and an African have a child, the child should be sterile. This is what he really thought. He had so many leaps in logic in his ranting, and he delivered it as if it was fact. And that's something we know about on YouTube. We know about that on YouTube. We know that someone speaking a certain way commands a certain kind of authority, and it it makes things that they say seem true. It could be complete gobbledygook. It often is. But because this is delivered with a kind of a sureness and a certain kind of tone, people will take it as being true. Now, he was doing that to his own self because he didn't have an audience on YouTube. And so to even call him a YouTuber, it's a misnomer. He wasn't really a YouTuber. He was just on YouTube. Now, in one of the videos, he actually said good morning to FS Avengers. So it was to YouTube or FS Avengers, whoever sees it first. Now, FS Avengers are free speech Avengers. For example, the people over on BitChute. He considers himself a part of that community. But again, if you look at those communities, he doesn't seem to be a part of that either, any more than he was a part of YouTube. But those were movements and things that resonated with him. I wouldn't be surprised if he's got profiles on every social media platform. He probably has a MySpace page. He probably has a Black Planet account. He was probably on all of the bulletin boards and everything going way back when. Some of you have probably interacted with him and didn't know it. But there's nothing you can look at in what he did that really can be logically connected to anything else. This was a man at the end of his rope, at the end of his life. This was a man that was in despair. This was a hopeless person who didn't know what the future was going to bring, who may have been tired of his life. At least he thought he was, until he was in that position. He probably planned to kill himself too, but then in a moment, couldn't go through with it because he had believed his own nonsense. Sitting in a room listening to yourself speak, you can convince yourself. That's why it's important to interact with other people. He had believed his own nonsense up until that point, and then reality hit him. That he didn't want to die. That he didn't really want to hurt those people. That he really wasn't what he thought he was. But it was too late. He had already hurt those people. He had already created the situation. And he's going to jail forever. And he's going to be exactly the thing that he was so obsessed with us all becoming. Re-enslaved. Self-fulfilling prophecy. He brought his fear to fruition through just talking, through obsessing his own mind with this concept and crushing everything around him into this idea again and again until he brought it to fruition. And now his freedom is gone, and now he can feel in jail he's gonna be on cloud 9. As ridiculous as that sounds, in jail will completely validate his entire point of view. He needed jail in order for his rantings and ravings to be true. Because he's going to be dealing with oppression for real on a daily basis. With dysfunction for real on a daily basis. As ridiculous as that sounds, that is completely true. As I tell my sons, as I tell myself and my friends, be careful who you allow to agree with you. Know who you're talking to. Be long-winded. Long-windedness is the only real protection you have in these YouTube streets from being misconstrued, from being misquoted, from being taken out of context, and having your words weaponized against your own self or against some other group that you may care about. These are strangers out here, and everybody's not in their right mind, even though there's 2 billion people on YouTube and only one guy did this. So all it takes is one guy, because people think just like Frank. They think in large chunks, large blocks. They'll find every single thing and make it into a category and then assign the blame to that category, because it's part of the rationalization process. There's got to be some way to compartmentalize this so that it could be okay, so I can get back on the train the next day, so I can go on with my life without the anxiety that I actually should have. The herd still has to drink water, even though one of the members just got eaten by a crocodile yesterday. You still need water. You still got to go down there. You got to find some way to rationalize it. Maybe the one that got eaten was slow or stupid or didn't listen or greedy or something. We got to find some way to make it make sense so we can go on with our lives. Or do we? Anyway, that's all I got to say. I've been looking at this guy's videos all day. I'm tired. I'm just going to publish all of these videos. I have all of his videos, just about. I started downloading his videos as soon as I heard he was a suspect. My little script went through and pulled everything down. And listen, if you've seen one of his videos, you've seen all of his videos. There's nothing in the videos that says anything different than any of the videos. There's no revelations. There's no nothing. There's no one to blame except for his own mind. And the fact that when you don't have community, you don't belong to anything, any organization, any church or club, or even a group of friends that meets at Wendy's, just some group where there's outside eyes that can look at you and that can show concern for you, anything can happen. Anything can happen. It's a cold world out there. And when you got access to weapons and weaponry, it could turn dark really quickly. And that reminds me, from outside the country, internationally, if you go look at their websites, they're talking about the gun. They're talking about the fact that he has access to the weapon that can do that kind of destruction, that those kind of people have access. What if he had an AR instead of a Glock with a scratched off serial number? But again, it's contextual. So in this country, if something is in the Constitution, it's off the table. So we can't really talk about where he was talking and what he was saying because freedom of speech. We can't talk about how irresponsible the press is with their sensational news, their darkness, competing with each other for advertising dollars and scaring the citizenry to death. We can't talk about that because freedom of the press. We can't talk about the gun because we have the right to bear arms. And so our reality in America is going to be this. And the only parts that we can control are the parts that we can control. The rest of it is going to be what it's going to be. And these kind of conversations and these kind of events are just going to continue to happen. And that's all I got to say. This is the Zooming In on Every Blade of Grass podcast. Peace out.